I'm Aaron Maté, sitting in for Jimmy Dore, here with Misha Pollan and Americans comedian Kurt Metzger, and our guest is Nick Cruse, host and co-founder of the revolutionary Blackout Network. And remember this headline from Politico right before the November 2020 presidential election? Hunter Biden's story is Russian disinfo, dozens of former intelligence officials say. This was the claim signed by a number of former intelligence officials from the CIA and other agencies that this laptop of Hunter Biden was just entirely a Russian op. And among other things, the content of that laptop showed that Hunter Biden was trading on his family name for business opportunities. It was showing basic Washington corruption. And rather than allow people to learn about that story, it got censored on the fake claim pushed by these former intelligence officials that it was all a Russian operation. And even during a presidential debate between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, Joe Biden cited this claim to make the argument that the laptop story was all just the work of Russia. So here he is citing this claim from these former intelligence officials.
50 former national intelligence folks who said that what he's accusing me of is a Russian plan. They have said that this has all the five former heads of the CIA, both parties, say what he's saying is a bunch of garbage.
This is classic Trump. We have 4 days left, and all of a sudden there's a laptop. There's overwhelming evidence that from the intelligence community that the Russians are engaged.
I still think that the stories from the fall about your son Hunter were Russian disinformation and a smear campaign, like you said.
Yes. I know you'd ask it. I have no response. It's another smear campaign.
It's a last-ditch effort in this desperate campaign to smear me and my family. The vast majority of the intelligence people have come out and said there's no basis at all.
So that is Joe Biden.
Boy, he has really deteriorated since then. He looks like lucid there.
That is Joe Biden back in 2020, in most of those clips there, basically pointing to this letter from former intelligence officials saying that the Hunter Biden laptop was all the product of Russia. Well, guess what we learn now? We don't just learn, as we learned before, that this was all a scam, that actually the laptop was real. But now we learn that the Biden campaign asked those intelligence officials to write that letter. Here is Li Fong, the 50 former intelligence former officials who falsely accused the 50 former intelligence officials who falsely accused the Hunter Biden laptop of being Russian disinformation. Letter in 2020 was organized by former CIA officials at the request of the Biden campaign, according to new testimony. And here is a recap of this new testimony from CBS News.
According to a letter released Thursday night from the Republican chairman of the House Judiciary and Intelligence Committees, former CIA Deputy Director Mike Morell told congressional investigators that days after the laptop story, Secretary of State Antony Blinken, then a Biden campaign advisor, reached out to Morell and set in motion the events that led to the intelligence officials' public statement.
So you get that this wasn't just a fake claim that Russia was behind Hunter Biden's laptop done to help the Biden campaign. This fake claim was done at the behest of the Biden campaign. And we're only learning this now. Here's the headline from the New York Post, whose story on the Hunter Biden laptop was censored as a result of that fake claim that this was just a Russian operation. Here's the headline: ex-CIA chief spills on how he got spies to write false Hunter Biden laptop letter to help Biden. Joe Biden's presidential campaign prompted former acting CIA Director Mike Morell to help Biden by organizing 50 colleagues to sign a letter in October 2020, falsely claiming that damning emails from Hunter Biden's laptop published by the Post were Russian disinformation. Morell, identified as a potential director of the CIA under Biden, said he organized the letter to, quote, help Vice President Biden because I wanted to help him win the election, unquote. So they were accusing Russia of putting out the laptop to help Trump, when in reality, they were falsely accusing Russia of being behind the laptop in order to help Biden.
Who's he saying this to? The reporter?
Mike Morell, the former deputy director of the CIA, is testifying before Congress. That's why the truth is coming out now, is because he's testifying under oath, where if you don't tell the truth, you get accused of perjury. So that's why we're getting this now. Until Blinken's call. Now, Blinken is now the Secretary of State. And before he became that, here he was asking his intelligence friends to put out a lie in order to help Biden. Until Blinken's call, Morell said he had no intention of writing any statement exonerating Biden. but he agreed that the conversation with Blinken, quote, triggered that intent, unquote, in him. Morell testified he sent an email telling Nick Shapiro, former deputy chief of staff to former CIA chief John Brennan, that the Biden campaign wanted the statement to go to a particular reporter at the Washington Post and that he should send the statement to the campaign as well. So the Biden campaign asked their intelligence friends to put out this lie, and they specifically handpick a Washington Post reporter who they can rely on as a stenographer to put this out. But in the end, Shapiro took the letter to Politico, where they found another stenographer, which he published on October 19th under the headline, Hunter Biden Story is Russian Disinformation. Here's the headline again from Politico back in October 2020. Mike Morell testified that after the debate, he received a call from Steve Ricchetti, chair of the Biden campaign, to thank him for writing the statement. He was the head of the Biden campaign at the time. Steve thanked me for putting the statement out. The thank you with Ricchetti was organized by fellow signatory Jeremy Bash, who I worked with at Beacon Global Strategies, and who is active politically, Mike Morell testified. Bash, who's the former chief of staff to the former Pentagon secretary and CIA chief, Leon Panetta, now he's a MSNBC analyst, was later appointed by Biden to a prestigious role on his president's intelligence advisory board. So that's your reward for putting out a lie to help Biden get elected, is you get appointed to the president's intelligence advisory board.
What do you think Mehdi Hassan's going to get for his cooperation?
And Lee Fong points this out, that the Biden campaign backed Hunter Biden 2020 intelligence letter was crafted by the same Beacon Global Strategies intel officials, this is a firm in Washington, involved in the 2016 Hillary Clinton campaign effort declaring Bernie as a threat to national security. And this is an important tie because this means, as I pointed out, that in 2 consecutive presidential elections, the Democratic candidate generated fake claims about Russia, spread them through intelligence officials and media stenographers, and did so to deflect from factual disclosures about their corruption. So we saw that in 2016, where the DNC emails were released, and the Clinton campaign, via its contractor CrowdStrike, generated the unsupported claim that Russia was behind those emails, and also via a different contractor, Fusion GPS, put out a conspiracy theory that Trump was a Russian conspirator. And now we have in 2020 the same Russiagate playbook. Now you have the Hunter Biden laptop showing corruption by Hunter Biden. And what does the Biden campaign do? Ask their intelligence community friends to put out a fake claim that Russia is behind all of this. So let me bring in Nick Cruse, co-founder of the Revolutionary Blackout Network. What's your take on this story?
I think the fact that you're even covering this, Aaron, is very Trumpian, because Trump was uniquely dangerous because he harmed the integrity. He questioned the integrity of the intelligence agencies. Do you guys remember
the community? The intelligence community.
So that's what one of the things that liberals said that made Trump uniquely evil, that he's undermined the intelligence agencies. I think having no trust in the intelligence agencies and undermining them is probably one of the most patriotic things you can do, especially after stories like these. Because before there was criticism, Noam Chomsky wrote a book about it, on how the media will just take sources from the intelligence agency, including the CIA, and they will publish it uncritically. We have advanced from that, Aaron, from where they're just not taking sources. They will literally allow the intelligence agencies to make up a story, and then they will publish it as fact, and then censor anyone who disputes it. Because once again, we come from a smaller channel on Revolutionary Blackout Network, and the Hunter Biden story, Aaron, was something that we was terrified of touching. Because if we debunk the mainstream propaganda on Hunter Biden with the size of the channel that we are, they could have struck us down and it would have been over. It would have been just the same with COVID. That's why those 2 issues we had to be very careful of. But I want to ask you guys, because this is the important part of the story. They got caught with this because I think you just said he had to say this because he would have been charged with perjury otherwise. So how many stories from the mainstream media starts like this that we never knew about, where you have politicians, because they're all well connected, it's all one big club, where you have politicians that tell an intelligence agent to plan a story to the media and they ran it. How many of those stories happened that we didn't know this about, Aaron?
Yeah.
These are the kind of things that keep me up at night because of these stories. But go ahead.
Yeah.
Did I tell you that a friend of mine who she used to work for Daily Beast and a bunch of other stuff, she's a reporter, and She eventually like stopped being a journalist, but towards when Obama was leaving office, she got invited. It's a bunch of like millennial age kind of online journalists got invited to go meet with Obama at the White House. And I didn't think I was like, oh, that's cool. You meet Obama. And they went and they had a meeting, and he told them he was very concerned because they think Trump has something Russia, and he just wanted to let him know. And then years later, I'm like, oh, he was putting a key in their battery in their back for that. Daddy's worried. It's such a club. It's crazy.
Such a club. And this is why actual congressional oversight is important. When we have actual congressional oversight, like we are getting in this one story, people are forced to tell the truth, because if they don't, then it's perjury and they can be criminally liable. So finally, because we have some congressional oversight here, Mike Morell, years after the fact, is forced to admit that, oh yeah, the Biden campaign asked me to do this. But instead, we have a culture where intelligence officials lie all the time, normally because they're never held to account, and they can rely on a media to repeat their lies, especially if it involves the Russian boogeyman.
The media will demand to know what they're doing to stop people from exposing their lies.
Here's Jimmy Dore. So for the millionth time, it wasn't Russia who was spreading misinformation to sway a presidential election. It was former heads of the CIA, of course. And of course, the media ran with their lies. So here is a sample.
Secret emails.
A really fishy story.
The Post claimed that the emails were found on a laptop computer that was brought to a repair shop in Delaware in the spring of 2019.
The FBI is now investigating whether those alleged Hunter Biden emails are actually connected to a larger foreign intelligence operation.
They may be related to a foreign intelligence operation.
Foreign intelligence operation.
Foreign intelligence.
Foreign intelligence.
Foreign intelligence operation.
For all we know, these emails are made up.
The information found on the laptop may be part of a Russian disinformation campaign.
Part of a Russian disinformation effort.
Described by many intelligence experts as having hallmarks.
All the hallmarks
of a Russian
disinformation.
Russian disinformation.
Disinformation campaign.
This is a classic example of the right-wing media machine.
The right-wing media machine. So this actually was a classic example of a Russiagate disinformation operation generated by the Democratic candidate in a second consecutive election. And some of the people who spread this were James Clapper, former director of national intelligence.
His face is the best. Right?
So, Director, a bunch of questions from this. Let me just start with this. How much does the source matter, right? So you hear the story of this laptop. We don't know a lot. We do know that the way that this information is getting out is through Steve Bannon and Rudy Giuliani. How much does the source matter here?
Well, source matters a lot, and the timing matters a lot, I think. And to me, this is just classic textbook Soviet-Russian tradecraft at work. The Russians have analyzed the target. They understand that the president and his enablers crave dirt on Vice President Biden, whether it's real or contrived, it doesn't matter to them. And so all of a sudden, two and a half weeks before the election, this laptop appears somehow and emails on it without any metadata.
That's a lie. He made that up. There was metadata. He just invented that.
Didn't he later claim he never said that, and they took it and ran with it? Was he the one that did that?
He did do that. Yeah. He did try to backtrack. Yeah, we'll get to that.
It's all very curious. But so here you have a willing target, and the Russians who are very sophisticated about how to exploit a willing target. And to me, that's what's at work here.
And so, when you try to figure out.
All right, here's another prominent person who pushed Russiagate mania, speaking to CNN.
Of the House Intelligence Committee, Congressman Adam Schiff. Congressman, thanks so much for joining us. Does it surprise you at all that this information Rudy Giuliani is peddling very well could be connected to some sort of Russian government disinformation campaign?
Well, we know that this whole smear on Joe Biden comes from the Kremlin. That's been clear for well over a year now, that they've been pushing this false narrative about the vice president and his son. And the idea that the president, that the White House counsel and others were made aware that Giuliani was being used by Russian intelligence and using Russian intelligence in the sense of meeting with an agent of the Kremlin and pushing out this Kremlin false narrative. The idea that they were knowing and still on the floor of the Senate during the impeachment trial, pushing this Kremlin narrative is.
So this is what actually happened. The FBI got possession of Hunter Biden's laptop well before it emerged publicly in the fall of 2020. And they sat on it. And they, instead of acknowledging this, they let the lie spread that this could be the product of Russia, and even started reportedly investigating whether this came from Russia, even though they knew that this was a genuine laptop. So that allowed the Biden campaign, once the laptop surfaced publicly, to go and generate this fake claim that it all came from Russia. And that allowed their media stenographers and allies like Adam Schiff to spread this lie, which they all knew was a lie because there was never any evidence for their claim that this came from Russia. There was ample evidence that this was a real laptop because it actually was. And that's how it works. So everything they accuse Russia of doing, sowing discord,
Yes.
spreading misinformation, they're doing on a massive scale from their high purchase in Congress and their cable news networks, constantly spreading this propaganda. And now that we learned that this lie was not just done to help the Biden campaign, but was generated by the Biden campaign itself, none of these people will take any accountability.
When you see everyone in media repeat the same line verbatim, as you showed earlier.
How often is that going to be a thing? The
Yes.
mashup of all of them. They don't even make it their
Yes.
own. They just say the line right off the copy.
So my question I have, because I want people to decolonize their mind, are journalists in this country really free? Like if you make it on corporate media, I mean, Aaron, you know, there's a reason why they get paid the big bucks. They go through this weaving process that Noam Chomsky talked about. If you're not willing to do that, you won't make it. You won't be on TV. You won't get that spot in the New York Times. So what does that say about our media?
They're
Aaron?
all Mehdi Hassan inside, is what it says.
They're saying that our journalists are not free. So my friend Fiorella Isabel, she works at RT, and most people in America believe that RT are told what to say by the Russian government. They're state media, the highest form of propaganda, because people on RT is not allowed to think for themselves. Meanwhile, Fiorella Isabel, Chris Hedges, and a few other people who work at RT, they say they get 100% journalistic freedom in their work. Meanwhile, in America, in order to be on those channels, you have to destroy your credibility. You have to destroy your credibility and repeat lies. You're not allowed to question it. If you do, you'll be fired, or you probably wouldn't make it there in the first place.
Yeah, the Hells Angels call it show in class.
Yeah.
Nick, and what do you say to leftists who have either ignored this story or even criticize people who focus on it, who say that, oh, like why do you care about this? Because this story actually helped defeat Trump. So why should we care about this? Even though, as we saw, the same people behind this letter also declared in 2016 that Bernie Sanders was a national security threat. And similarly, in 2020, during the primaries, this Russiagate playbook was used to undermine Bernie again when some leaks came out from the intelligence community claiming that Putin was secretly trying to help Bernie win. So what do you say to leftists who don't think that stuff like this is a very big deal because the target is the Republican side?
Yeah, I mean, the best we really can do is shame them because at RBN, at Revolutionary Blackout, we don't take people seriously. If you consider yourself a leftist, if you are have any sort of sympathy of the Democratic Party, because Aaron, that's the only reason why someone would deny the story, because they want the Democrats to defeat the Republicans. As you mentioned before, they will say, well, this will hurt our chances of being Republicans. But if you are covering up for the Hunter Biden laptop scandal story, there's only one thing I can call you. You are soft on corruption. You are soft on corruption. Corruption is okay as long as your team does it. So there's not really much we can say to them other than we got to hope that their sense of shame allow them to be to get this issue correct. Because if you are one of the many progressives, I know you've seen many of these people as well. They're more Democrat sympathizers. They call themselves socialists. They call themselves communists. But at the end of the day, they're Democrats. The terms mean nothing if you support the Democratic Party. They willing to sacrifice their integrity to maintain their position in the social club. We cannot allow them to be part of our social club if you're weak on corruption and if you are still supportive of this two-party duopoly. We are post-duopoly leftists on Revolutionary Blackout, and that's the only way you can maintain your credibility. Unless you are willing to hold both parties accountable. If you are not, you lack integrity the same way they will accuse Trump and their supporters of not having integrity. So to answer your question directly, the only thing we can do is just only thing we can do is tug on the fact that a lot of them want to protect their credibility, explain it to them, and if they still are not changing their mind about it, we've got to remind them, you've been stalked on corruption. You're not doing anything special here. But that's all. There's not much we can really say. Like if you are like a socialist, if you're a communist, and you are still supporting the Democratic Party, what can we really say? You know what I mean? What can we really say that haven't gotten you out of it already? But
Sam Harris summed up when he moronically just blurted out the thing they all know not to say out loud. He summed up the entire thing. Hunter Biden could have dead kids in his basement. It wouldn't have mattered.
Exactly.
Yeah, everything is cool as long as Trump didn't get in. And that's it. That's all. Most of these people don't know anything.
No. And by the way, so recently, as Kurt mentioned earlier, there's been this attempt to do damage control. So you heard earlier James Clapper saying that this is classic Russian tradecraft at work. Now he's saying he never meant to say that. So this is a headline recently for the Washington Post. The Hunter Biden laptop and claims of Russian disinformation. The letter signed by more than 50 former intelligence officials about the laptop was carefully worded to say much less than is often claimed. And here's James Clapper saying there was message distortion.
That's why we gave it to them. We knew it would be distorted how we wanted.
Politico deliberately distorted what we said. So he's claiming that it was Politico's fault that they said the laptop came from Russia, even though we heard him say that earlier on CNN. And that's called rats fleeing a sinking ship, because this is people throwing each other under the bus now that the truth is coming out. And now we learn that not only did they know this was fake, but that this fake claim came from the Biden administration itself.
We're telling jokes in Nashville, Honolulu, Los Angeles, Northampton, Massachusetts, Syracuse, Cohoes, New York, Hartford, Connecticut, Baltimore, Chicago, Rosemont, San Diego, and more. Go to jimmydore.com to get a link for all those tickets. Plus, you can watch my new special, COVID Lies Are Funny.